artist. I just like to color. So blends have been around for a few years, and if you've been with Stampin' Up! For a long time, you know that they were in for a while and then out and then back in. So let's just talk about some super basics. Most of you know, but some may not, so let's get that over with. You need an ink, and you need a dye-based ink. The Tuxedo Black Memento works really well. It's a fade-resistant dye, and you need a dye, something permanent. StazOn works just as well if you have that and not this, but this is kind of everybody's go-to black ink right now, I think. So it works great for just about anything. So there's that. Then there's going to be the type of papers that you use. And so here's where experimenting over the last few years has changed a bit for me. This is the thick Whisper White paper. This is the regular Whisper White paper. And this is the shimmery white cardstock paper. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, which isn't as thick as the thick, but it's thick and it works quite well. And I like it. Now, how can I explain this? So you can use Whisper White if you're just going to use one color blending and you're doing something really simple and you're not layering color and layering and layering and layering. Then you can use this. It will pill a bit if you go too crazy on it, and it will bleed quicker because it's not as thick. It's not going to absorb the alcohol as much. So that's why your best bet if you're going to be layering lots of color is going to be the thick cardstock. So that's paper and that's ink. So exactly what are blends? Well, we know they are alcohol markers, and they, for Stampin' Ups, come in two colors. And they're really meant to coordinate with our inks and our cardstock. And you can do some really simple coloring to some simple layering to maybe deeper layerings. They're just great markers. They're fun to work with. I really enjoy it. I like coloring. And that's, to me, that's all they are. They're just a coloring tool. So what do? They blend. They blend ink, but what people don't really talk about as much as what they do, they layer color. In the beginning, when I first started with these, I used to say this to my customers. So here's Flirty Flamingo, and I'd say, in this one pen, you can get 3 colors. But that's not actually really accurate. It kind of is and it kind of isn't. So I would say that's the first color, that's the second color, and that's your third color. But really what this is layering. And you need to look at your alcohol markers as layering, because that's what you're doing. You're layering color on your image in different areas to create shading, and you're also blending, which is what the alcohol in here allows you to do. So maybe that helps you. Maybe it doesn't. So if you want to just use them in absolute simple terms, which super simple for anybody, is just take a light color. I'm going to take the light flamingo, right? I always forget what color I have in my hand, and just put your first layer on, and that's really as simple as you need to go. Now I do find it's different coloring smaller images than larger images, and I'll get into that maybe a little further into the video. You know, it used to be when they first came out, the message was, well, I perceive the message anyway as color fast, because if they dry, you won't be able to blend, and that's actually just not true. It might be true in cases maybe when you're working with really, really dark colors, but you're just layering color, so you can let it dry. And in fact, in some cases, you should let it dry so that you can get a darker color over top of it. Small images, I color differently than big images, and I'll try and explain that as I go, but this is just basic, right? Just your pink and your flamingo pink and your green. If I want to add shading with just old olive, using the dark and the light, I will go in on this, and they say you see, some of you might be doing it different. You might actually put a light layer of olive in there first and then go over it. But when the image is this small, This is just how I just like to do it this way. I don't think there's a super right way or a wrong way. As long as it looks good at the end, then it looks good. So I might give that a minute or two to dry, so I can go in there and make it even darker and add more layer of color. Now this whole bleeding thing that they talked to you about, did I mention that earlier? I can't remember. So part of that has to do with the thickness of your cardstock. See how it's bleeding through? So I'm getting more and more color. When that starts to get super dark, if I don't let this dry, for instance, I will bleed for sure. For sure I will bleed. If I let it dry, I can actually go over it and it's not gonna bleed because it has to be wet to bleed. And so that's just the principle of it. Okay, so I'm gonna make this dark. And then I'm gonna go back in with the lighter version of the old olive. Doesn't really matter what tip you use. And I'm gonna go over that dark meets white. I'm almost gonna make a medium kind of green. Actually, kind of wanna use the other side. Doesn't really matter what side, whatever you're comfortable with. See the two colors? Dark. I'm just gonna go over both colors until it blends in a little bit better. I do find, and I don't know if you find this with your markers, sometimes one end of the marker is greener or darker in color than the other. So you'll have to just play around with it. This is the easiest way of blending, I find, two colors. I hope you can see that. Raise that up a bit. So, but, I can also put a layer of your first layer of ink and then go back if I want to with a dark. This to me takes longer. This to me is the faster method, but I can still go in here and add some dark. Again, I don't have to worry about this drying. I used to think I did, but you don't really. And I could leave it like that. You're just gonna get a different look, I think. And you just need to play around with it. And I want it to dry, so I'm just gonna let it dry. I'm gonna go back in on this one. I could do the flower the same way I did the leaves here, or I can take the flower, I've let it dry for a bit, and take the dark flamingo color, just saturate it. Go back with my light. Blend the two. And I'm not even going to go to the top of the flower because I'm going to actually leave it. I don't know if you can see, but I'm leaving my first layer that's in this flower. I'm leaving it alone. So you can do, I'm using thick. You see, if you're doing a small thing like that and you're not putting very many layers on it, you can use the regular Whisper White. It won't really make a difference. It's when you get into the, I think the bigger images and you're layering and layering and coloring where you get a bit of an issue. Anyway, that's just two colors. And I'm going to show you how to take two different colors. This isn't two colors. This is one color, two shades. That's what this is. But I'm going to do a bird and I'm going to show you how to blend two completely different colors. So you've got simple, you've got a basically one color shading, and then you've got this. So I'm going to take that bird and we're going to color the bird. We're going to take, now, I don't know, I did this completely wrong when I was practicing. Well, not wrong. I had colored this to practice and then I went in and actually put the dark Calypso coral in here and I thought I had screwed up, but I hadn't, and it actually worked out really well. I'll show you that in a minute. I want to, well, maybe I'll show you that now. So what I wanted to do, I'll show you the card. Why don't I do that? I'll show you, this is the card that I made. See that little bird? So that's the light Calypso coral. So then when I went to do a practice, I accidentally used the dark one. And as I was coloring in my video, I'm going, oh, shoot, this isn't the color I want. But you know what? It's okay. So this wasn't the color I intended initially, but I'm going to show you because it's such a dark color and you're going to think, oh my goodness, really? How are you going to blend that with crumb cake? Doesn't make sense, does it? Well, I don't think it does. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to color. I'm going to think, oh, it's too, doesn't look good. But remember, you're layering. So this is your first layer. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it in there. Get color in there. And in fact, sorry, go over the dark color. Just go right over it. Okay, so I kind of did that and I wasn't really happy with myself. But I thought, oh, I'm just practicing. So I'll go in with some dark, right? And I'll do some highlighting. By the way, just, you know, you don't have to be an expert to highlight. Just follow all the little slashes that the artist's already put in the image for you. That's all you have to do. Easy peasy, right? And I thought, okay, so maybe if I put light over top of the dark, what will happen? And look what happened. I don't know, just got this beautiful blend. Isn't that nice? So it worked. I thought I made a mistake and it actually worked. So you really just have to play around and try different things and see what works and what doesn't work. I want the little bird's head to be darker, so I'm going to put an extra layer of color on the top. And you know what? I don't actually mind this. Now it does lighten up as it dries. It gets a little lighter. I don't mind that, but I might go in and just make it darker. See, and then you're gonna go, oh, you've lost your shading. Well, have I? All I have to do is go back in there with some dark and keep layering. It's just a layer and more layers and more layers. That's all you're doing. Layering color after color after color. And then go back in with a light marker. And, you know, just do the edges if you just want to do the edges and sort of leave some light. I don't know, I find this so much fun to play with. Is it just me? Maybe it's just me. I'm just weird. Anyway, that was the mistake bird I made because I made my card like this and with the light coral to match the paper. And I was practicing and did this and I quite like it. I think I might like it darker than I do lighter. Am I in that? I hope I'm in focus here. Anyway, that's that. That's two completely different colors. Now, if you're going to work with things like navy or something, it might be different. You just got to play around with it. So here's another one that I did. Bear with me here. So I took this image. Now this is from the Paper Pumpkin in February. And so I don't really have many big images. So this I would consider a big image. And I'm actually going to use 4 colors. They're all blue, but they're 4 colors. So I'm using Seaside Spray, the light and the dark. Make sure I have this in order. And then Night of Navy. Oh, you probably can't see that. And then Night of Navy, light and the dark. And I'm just going to put them off camera for a while. So here's my image. Now, again, I'm not an artist. I don't know a lot about coloring. But what I do know or have been told by my photographer neighbor is that dark colors tend to be in the distance and they show that things are in the background. They're further away from you. So if you've got something like this, your top outer leaves should actually be darker. Now, you know, we're not coloring the real world here, but you know, we want to play with colors and have some fun. So, so that's a little tip for you. Now, here's where they tell you, they being Google, gotta love Google and YouTube. A lot of people tell you to do maybe one petal at a time or one section of the image at a time, which is all true. So this is my first, but again, it's all about layering. So here's my first layer. I'm not going to do this whole flower because this will take an eternity and you don't want to watch me color the whole flower. But see how that petal flips over? That petal in real life, if it flipped over, is closer to me than the petal underneath. So it should actually stay lighter than the color in the bottom. So I've put one layer of color on everything, and underneath here I'm going to do another layer. So that's layer number 2. And I have tried doing then the darker of the Seaside spray, but I didn't like it. It just wasn't giving me a big enough contrast. So I took the Night of Navy, and it looks super dark, right? Don't freak out. It looks terrible, but that's okay. It's gonna be all right. And you're gonna go back in with a lighter color and blend it in. And you might do that a couple times. See? And you know, I could play with this for 30 minutes. Like seriously, I could just color this, let it dry, come back, because it is going to fade as it dries, and you're going to go, oh, that wasn't really as dark as maybe I wanted it to be. So these back petals, for instance, I'm going to go with, what am I going to go with? I'm going to go with the dark Seaside spray. That's going to be my first color, my first layer. And it's supposed to be a bit darker back here. I'm going to do this petal too. Living on the Edge. I'll do that petal too. Okay, that was dark what is that? Seaside, light Seaside spray. Now here's the dark Night of Navy. And I'm going to add a little shading. And here, like that. That's the dark. And then I might go back to my dark Seaside, which really, if I put the 4 together, I'm looking at this really as my lightest, a little darker, a little darker, and a little darker. And I'm working with them as if they were one color like that. So that's just how my brain works. So I'm gonna take, what did I put on there? Anyway, I'm gonna take something lighter to blend it, and just go over it. And I'm going to keep doing this. I'm just going to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. And I may leave this alone for a while and go back to doing another leaf, putting in my first layer, doing that the same as I did the second leaf, putting my dark navy, just like that. Going back in with my light. Actually, I'm going to go in with my medium. Calling it medium, it isn't. It's the darker of the Seaside spray, but you know, I might do that. I might go back in here then, go up here. I'm still leaving that little fold over as light as I can. Okay, and I'm just gonna keep playing and keep playing and keep layering and keep layering. It is time consuming. I find it fun. And when you're done, you have something like this. So I added a little Wink of Stella to that. So you can use multiple colors together. So these colors in the middle was Daffodil and Mango. So don't be afraid to mix similar yellows together, or different blues together, or different greens together. I love Seaside spray, don't you? It's such a pretty color. Anyway, that's how I color. I hope that helps you, or you've learned something new. Was there anything else I was going to tell you? I don't think I was going to tell you anything else.